Your Story with Melinda Estabrooks, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
Well, welcome back to another show of Your Story with Melinda, and this show is going to be great because now I have my new best friend, Wisdom Moon, with me via Skype from Nashville. And yes, his name is Wisdom Moon, and it's his real name. It's not some stage name, it's his real name. Wisdom is great. He's part of our team here at faithstrongtoday.com because I know you guys are checking us out. And every Friday you can hear him as he hosts his podcast, We Are Worship. And I think, Wisdom, it's also live Wednesdays on your site as well, right?
Yes.
All right. Wisdom is also works for Integrity Music. He's a worship leader. He's passionate about worship and artists, so we're going to learn a lot from him. He's got 4 kids.
Yeah.
Pray for his wife.
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're going to learn a lot. We're going to hear his incredible story of faith, how he came to Jesus, and why he is so in tune and passionate about worship and leading people to Jesus. Wisdom, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how's Nashville?
Today, it looks beautiful. It's nice and warm. Feels like summer.
Yeah?
Yeah. We moved here almost 2 years ago, and yeah, we're loving it. So
Awesome. Okay, well, Wisdom, let's just dive in because you have a long story, a really great story. So, I mean, here you are, you're sitting in this place in Nashville where people want to be because it's sort of like this hub of music and energy. But let's go back to the beginning of your story. You're from South Korea
yeah.
and your family. Tell us a bit about that because your dad was an atheist and your mom a devoted Christian. Tell me how that was growing up. And then, because people would be like, how did that work that you found Jesus? You know, so start from the beginning there.
Yeah, so I can go way back before I was even born. My mom married this atheist man. It was kind of an arranged marriage, you know, because it was back in the day when that was common. And in Korea, having a son was like a huge deal. Like, you have to have a son, you know, to pass on your name and all that. So my parents started having kids, one after another. It was a girl, and they had 4 kids. They were all girls. And so finally, my mom prayed really hard. I think she did like a 100-day prayer and said, God, if you give me a son this time, I'm going to devote him to your ministry, like Hannah's prayer, you know. So she prayed, and they had me.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm the 5th. I'm the youngest. And, you know, this was back when Korea was a lot more poorer country, you know, so it was kind of a third world country. So growing up there, it was, family is a huge thing. So like my, you know, dad's parents lived with us, and they were kind of Buddhist. And so there was a lot of tension in the home between my mom, who's a prayer warrior, and she was in ministry, and then my dad and his parents, who didn't want to go to church, you know. And so there was a lot of like butting heads, and there was a lot of fights about that in the home. So it wasn't a very, you know, like peaceful, happy home growing up, you know.
So how, as a young boy, are you internalizing this? How is this making sense? Like, are you sitting here going, I've got a Christian mom who prays. I'm a miracle baby, really, because she prayed. And so there's a God part, a Jesus part. And then there's my dad who's like atheist, no God, that kind of thing. How are you internalizing this as a young boy? How are you making sense of this?
Yeah, like it was, I think a lot of it had to do with my mom taking me to church every time she was at church. So I remember as a little kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old, being taken to church for like a Friday night, all-nighter, you know, prayer meeting or something, and I'd be sleeping on the pew. So it was just a part of me, you know, growing up in church. So I didn't even have second thoughts about it. And because my dad had come across more, threatening towards the church, and my mom was like the peaceful, peacemaker, and very loving. So I naturally, I think, gravitated, towards that and towards church. And it was some place that I can go where, I could have friends and, be involved and have fun. So church to me was like a safe place growing up. And I didn't really even realize that I was supposed to have a personal relationship with God and that I was a sinner till I was, about 12 years old.
And how did that happen? Like 12, you're sort of coming into your own as a young boy. There's a lot of stuff you're dealing with. You're dealing with like puberty and body change and things. And for some guys, it's, not necessarily, sort of make the decision for God. It's all other things, right?
Yeah.
Why at 12? What was it that was sort of this catalyst or trigger where you said, okay, you know what? I want to follow him. I want to make a decision.
Yeah. I actually had a very rebellious summer that year.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
That was the only rebellious time really of my life where I started shoplifting, I started lying to my parents and skipping church and having friends that I was influencing in a negative way and they were influencing me. And a lot of it was hidden from my parents and I tried to make stuff up. Like I would literally tell my mom, hey, I'm going to my friend's church, but I would go down to my school and just hide out for 2 hours.
And do what?
I would just sit there and I think I would find cigarettes on the ground and like pretend I'm smoking. And
the cigarette butts that people discarded. And you would pretend to smoke, or would you actually smoke?
No, I tried cigarettes because my grandparents smoked in our house. So I would try a couple of times just out of rebellion and I hated it.
Yeah.
So I would just do stupid stuff to rebel, just to rebel against my mom and against the church. So one day, my mom found out through a friend of mine what had been happening. And so it was actually after church on a Sunday afternoon. And she sat me down in my room and said, you know what, this is not something she was very grieved. And she said, I'm not going to spank you. I can't make you change. And she said, the only thing that can change you is the grace of God and you realizing that you're a sinner and you need his forgiveness and you need Christ in your life. And she actually led me in a sinner's prayer right there, like on our knees. I was bawling. She was bawling.
And did you get it, Wisdom? I mean, like sinner's prayer, sin at 11. Do you believe you really understood that concept?
That was the first time that I actually realized, wow, I'm a sinner. Like I actually need Jesus and what he did on the cross. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was just stories, Bible stories about Noah and, Moses and things like that. Like that was the first time it actually hit me. And I realized in my heart that I'm a sinner. I need a savior.
Yeah. That's cool because it seems like, and in my own story, it's always sort of like that prodigal daughter. And then you hit that wall, and I've done that so many times, and then you realize, oh my goodness, in and of myself, like I'm not good. Or in the sense of you can only go so far with you where you're like, I've tried everything, it's not working, and I'm not happy doing this. When you're trying to escape or be rebellious or whatever, I'm not happy. And then you realize, the only way that true happiness, deep-rooted, seated fulfillment and contentment comes from relationship with Jesus. And I don't want to sound it like it's so cliche and that's the answer. I'm just saying, in and of itself, you can only go so far, right, in yourself. So you say the prayer. And I'm assuming like a light from heaven didn't fall down on you and went, ah! And you're like, all right. Or maybe, I don't know. All right, here I go. Like, so it happens, you say this prayer, but really the prayer, I want to be really clear, it's not like the prayer is the magical potion, right?
No.
Right? Because I'm kind of like not into that. Just say the prayer and you're in and you're good. Right. It's a heart change. So what happened then? Right? Because you say this prayer, you realize, you need the Savior. And then what happens? What happens with your heart? What do you think in your mind?
Yeah, what really happened for me is surrender, surrendering my will and my life to Christ. And then there was a shift in just how I, approached life and how I lived my life. And I really became on fire for Jesus. And at school, I I wasn't even ashamed. Like I was very bold. And I was in middle school, and there was no like Christian club. I don't know if like that's still a thing these days, but
I don't think so anymore. I don't know. I don't know if they're
yeah,
allowed to be in schools, but maybe there are
yeah.
some. But
Like back then, there were Christian clubs in schools, and there wasn't one at our school. So I actually went to our vice principal and said, "Can we start a Christian club?" And he actually happened to be a Christian, so
wow, yeah.
so I kind of led the charge in starting a Christian club there, and from there, like I started to really be a witness, in my school, and somehow I had like boldness, and even though like English was my second language, and um, you know, when I moved here, I was 9 years old,
Yeah, so
moving
so
to
your family
California.
immigrated, right? When you
Yeah,
were from South Korea to California. Is
yeah.
that right?
So I was 9,
Okay.
yeah, moved to California, and interestingly, back then, I was a very, very like small minority. There were like no Asians in my school, so I dealt with a lot of racism growing
Mhm.
up in school, and I somehow learned the English pretty quickly. And within like 2 years, I graduated from ESL, English as second language, and I became fluent, and I was able to, communicate to my friends,
Yeah.
the gospel, and so yeah.
Let me ask you this. Sorry, I just because that's a big one because even for me, when I came to Canada, I say this in my story. Like I was, one of two or three brown kids in my sort of
Mm,
middle school and my high school. There might have been five or six of us. Because the guys that were, Jamaican were for the football team, right? But that's hard as a kid because I understand that. I mean, how do you work through that? Because you're completely judged on your skin color and being
hmm
different, but not for who you are. And
yeah,
so, how did you make sense of that? How did you navigate through that? Because that would have been hard.
yeah. I think the first year in the States, it was a huge culture shock, and I think I cried a lot
Oh,
at home,
yeah,
and just depressed and feeling lonely. Um, Everybody looked so different from me, and
yeah.
I knew kids were making fun of me. I didn't even know what they were saying.
Mm.
I had one other Asian kid in my class in fourth grade, and I was like standing in line, about to go into class one day from recess, and he came up to me and like started saying stuff and laughing at me, and I was just so upset at that point that I actually like punched him in the stomach, and he started crying.
So I'm laughing not at well. Should I
I'm
say
like,
good for you or oh wait, am I affirming that? But yeah, so he was like bullying you, and you were like,
"You're the only other Asian kid in this class, and you're making fun of your other Asian
oh,
kid in the class." So
oh, that's
that made me
sad.
extra upset.
Wisdom. So you're crying, you're going home, and I mean, here's the thing: you could have decided to get really angry or super depressed and do something that would have harmed yourself. You could have been really angry and bullied back.
hmm
Why did you choose not to? What is it, the Jesus factor, or what was it really? Because that's hard. Again, you're a teenager, your brain's still trying to form, you're new, it's culture shock. I get it,
Yeah.
and this is hurtful. And as a young person, like that's devastating. And you could respond either way, right?
Yeah,
But
and I think a lot of it I internalized, and that's what ended up leading to rebellion,
yeah,
in that summer. And my mom, unfortunately, wasn't around very much because of ministry, and I think a lot of it had to do with just an unhealthy, atmosphere, like environment in the home.
yeah.
And so I think she would turn to ministry and be away from home a lot. My dad was very disconnected from me. We hardly had a deep conversation. It was just kind of like, hi, how was
Mm.
school, kind of thing. So I had nobody to turn to. So a lot of it I had to internalize, and that's when I started making the wrong kinds of friends in school.
So you're making the wrong kinds of friends, but there's something about that you really believe that you need to make a decision to follow Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And it's in there because I get it, wisdom, because it's like this weird tension. not, I don't want to say double life hypocrite, but kind of, right? Because
Yeah.
you know and you really believe about Jesus, and yet you're acting counter to what he's about, right?
Yeah.
So was it the music? What was it that kept you from not going completely off the rails? What finally happened? Because here you are now, worship guy, working in music industry, podcast about music. Everything seems about music and artists and getting people collectively together to worship. So what happened? Where did that come from?
I think looking back, I would really credit a lot of it to my mom's prayer. Like she would pray for me every night, every day. I mean,
get it.
she's like a true intercessor. She prays for hours and hours every day for people. And I think that's really what kept me from just completely, rebelling and going off and doing my own thing. And so a lot of times I was just torn, like that double life.
Yeah.
And just wrestling with that constantly, So, yeah, I would definitely credit that to my mom's prayers.
Yeah, me too. When I share my story, across Canada, I say to parents a lot, I said, listen, if you've got this prodigal daughter, son, or grandparents, if you have got a prodigal, granddaughter, grandson, or whatever, you need to be on your knees praying. And I actually call it extreme. I'm you pull heaven down to earth and you say, God, your will. And if it's not me as a parent getting through to my kid, then find somebody that's in their world to talk to them.
Yeah.
Right. And I say so many times, in my own life, I'm at the club, I'm drunk, I'm hanging out, I'm dancing, and one of my girlfriends who's totally drunk looked at me. I'll never forget this. And we're sitting at the club, and she looks at me. She goes, "You know what, Melinda?" And the music's loud, and somehow I don't know how I heard her. And she goes, "You know what?" She goes, "This is what I think of you." And I'm like, "Okay," best friend hanging out. She goes, "You're a hypocrite."
Oh, wow.
Okay, not a Christian, drunk, telling me I'm a hypocrite. And something was in me went, and I was like,
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, I kind of laughed. I'm like, God, did you really use a drunk friend of mine at this club in Toronto to speak to me? And I feel like in a very deep voice, he said, yes. Yes, I did, right?
Yeah.
So he can do that, right? And I think that it's kind of cool how he works that way. So you're in high school. Tell me now, let's sort of figure out in your story, you do that, but then within it, you're liking worship music or music. So where did that happen? And then from there, how did it kind of springboard to what you're doing now?
Yeah, music was always something that I really loved and enjoyed, and I just couldn't stop listening to music. And maybe that was my way of de-stressing and my own therapy in a way.
Yeah.
So I would actually spend a lot, every dollar that I had, I would spend it on buying Christian music on cassette tape.
Cassettes. I loved it. Yeah. And then if you got really mad at something, you just pull out the tape and we'd string them all along the road.
I've never done that.
No, we used to do that at Halloween and stuff.
Oh, wow. Wow,
that's
you're
awesome.
pretty
Okay,
bad.
so cassette. What was your first cassette for worship? Do you remember?
Some of my first artists that I bought were Carmen,
Yes.
BB and CC Winans.
Yeah.
I actually listened to such a variety of music.
Okay.
Anything from Black gospel to what we call CCM now to rap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even people Wayne Watson, and I listened to just such a diverse style of music, and I think that really helped shape me and have a passion for music. And I would sometimes at night I would hide in my closet with a little Walkman.
The Walkman. I had a pink one that I got from Hong Kong when I was living in Asia.
Oh, wow.
And I wish I kept it now. It would have been a classic and retro.
Yeah.
It's all coming back. Oh, the Walkman. Yeah.
I would record and pretend that I'm a radio DJ,
That's awesome.
and record my own shows that nobody ever heard.
Where are those cassettes, Wisdom?
I burned them and
Oh,
destroyed them permanently. Made sure that nobody could ever
shoot,
access
that would
those.
have been awesome to come back in archives and then play it on your podcast. That would be
Yeah.
great. So you know what's neat about that? It's like there you are. It's like something, I mean, God putting that in you, but then now you're like the host of a podcast.
Yeah.
So from the, in the closet secretly to now very publicly with like, hundreds of thousands of people listening in all
Yeah.
the time, whether on YouTube or on your site. It's amazing. So you're going about, you're listening, and are the words or the music changing? Like what's connecting you with worship? Because not everybody wants to like land in Christian music world, be
Yeah.
a worship guy, do that. Like what's happening? What's connecting with you about that?
Yeah, like as far as worship, what really I think attracted me to worship is I don't know if you remember the song "Trading My Sorrows" back in the day.
Yes.
So
I'm trading my. Sorry. That was the first one, like for Baptist girl. I became a little Baptist-costal. No, I'm seriously, because we had to clap and move a little
That's
bit.
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
huge. Yes, I loved that song.
So I bought that CD, Freedom by Daryl Evans,
Yeah.
and I would play that over and over. Like I listened to that CD so many times,
Yeah.
like hundreds of hours. And God just like used that album to make me a worshiper and help me realize like what a worshiper is. And I was in college, like freshman in college, when I was like really deep into that CD, and I would a lot of times just like lock my bedroom door and turn up my stereo and listen to it for hours and just worship and pray. And one day, just God met me in the middle of it.
Wow.
In one of the songs, and I just completely broke down and started bawling, and like I had one of those just like encounters with God that I can't explain,
Yeah.
and that really I think is what the point where I like really became like super passionate about worship, and I started like leading worship and getting very involved in the worship ministry and like learning about worship from conferences. And I would go to conferences by myself in a different city and fly out there.
Wow. So
Yeah.
talk to me about this, because I mean, it sounds like it's just like worship is one of our words, our catchphrases in sort of like this evangelical world of ours,
Yeah.
right? What is the importance of it? I mean, we're in a time now where there are friends of mine and people who, don't collectively get together on a Sunday. Church is where you are, small group, and that's good. But why is it important that we collectively get together and worship? And what would your definition of worship be? So let's start with that.
Yeah.
What's your definition of worship? And why is it important that we collectively worship together?
Yeah, I think there's, two different, I guess, definitions of worship. One is, many people use this definition, worthship, giving God his worth. And worship is really a lifestyle, we're supposed to be living sacrifices. So really, we are worship, just like, the We Are Worship podcast
Yeah.
and what we do. I see it in the big picture. Worship is a lifestyle. It's our life, giving it, to God, for God. And then the other aspect that you're, referring to is congregational worship or corporate worship, where we gather together and we call it a worship service. And it's not just the singing, but it's also the sermon and the giving. That's all a part of the corporate worship aspect. So, I mean, I think that's very, very important to a Christian, because a lot of times we can, try to be the Lone Ranger as a Christian, but we weren't meant to live that way. We're meant to be a part of a body, the body of Christ.
Yeah.
So when we come together, we're not just coming together for our own sake so we can feel better or we can hear a sermon, but we're there to encourage each other, like knowing that, maybe somebody has cancer in your church and they're there worshiping their heart out and lifting their hands and, they're just pouring it all out. When you see that as an example of worship, you like get so encouraged and you go, man, I have no reason not to worship.
Yeah.
Because God's worthy of it. And it's, worship isn't dictated by our circumstance and what we're going through, but it's dictated by, who God is.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's really key because I think a lot of people equate worship as just like standing singing. And so when they're not engaged, they're like, I'm not really into worship. Like I don't raise my hands. I'm not like you. Like, so, and people get all hung up on that. But I think that's a beautiful definition. Like worship is us in everything we do. Yeah. And just the singing part is one aspect of it. But worship is in our giving, our time, our sacrifices, how we relate to people. That's amazing. A few more minutes left, but I mean, I know maybe you can't say this, but what or who is your favorite, I wouldn't say worship leader, but one of your favorite interviews? What was your favorite interview with a worship leader in your years?
Oh, man.
I know. And that, okay, maybe you have to be politically correct on this, but just somebody and why that stands out.
I started podcasting like 10 years ago. It was called the All About Worship podcast. It was back when like podcasting had just started and not many people knew about it, and I set up a MySpace page and started connecting with people.
MySpace, I did too, but in the day.
And I didn't know how to interview people. I didn't go to school for it, and I just thought it'd be cool and fun to do it. And God started opening up different doors, and I actually got to interview like folks like Carrie Job and Kim Walker Smith of Jesus Culture. I would say one of my favorite interviews was with Kim Walker Smith because she shared a very, very like embarrassing story that I still remember.
What is it?
She has a brother that she was taking care of that was really sick, and like in the middle of the night, she had been up for hours and hours and taking care of her brother, and she was just exhausted. And so she was like sleeping, I think, in the same room as her brother. And she got so thirsty in the middle of the night, like she just got up and drank, this whole cup of water, and then woke up in the morning and looked in the cup and realized she had drank his vomit.
No! No, she did not. Yeah. No, she did. Oh, I feel kind of sick now. Ew. Yeah. So he actually vomited in the cup. Like he vomited in the cup?
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't make it to the washroom or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, that's disgusting, but that's an awesome story.
I was like, I don't know how I got that out of her, but
because that's like one that forever will be. That's awesome. That's a good one. That's a good one. Listen, I want to have you back. My producer Kirk is giving me the countdown, but I just want to encourage you, like, keep doing what you're doing. Leadership at weareworship.com. Amazing, great resources. That's my plug to you viewers listening. And also, We Are Worship podcast, airs on faithstrongtoday.com on Fridays. And it also airs live on weareworship.com. Is that right? On Wednesdays?
If you go to weareworshipwednesday.com, it will actually take you straight to the page.
Yeah. And so keep doing what you're doing, Wisdom. Like, amazing. Great story. And I think it's just a great story of how God can use you, even if you're a rebel, and even though you struggle and your family life isn't perfect. God's got great plans for you, and you're a testimony of that. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and seriously, if you come up to Toronto, I'll come down to Nashville, and we'll go on the road or something. That would be great. We'll share all of our embarrassing stories, and all of the people we've interviewed, their embarrassing stories too.
Yeah.
All right, well, take care, and we'll connect with you soon.
Your Story with Melinda Estabrooks. Listen for new episodes every Monday, and subscribe to the podcast at faithstrongtoday.com.